Ethan Cole had never seen eyes like hers before. Large, silver, and full of something he couldn't name. It wasn't just fear. There was a kind of loneliness there, one he understood far too well. He had been working alone in the maintenance sector of Aurora Station for months now. Most of his friends had left for postings closer to home. Even his sister, the one person who still called him family, had moved to a different colony on the far side of the galaxy. Messages between them had become shorter, slower, and sometimes never sent at all. He missed her more than he could say. When the alien girl tugged at his hand, it felt strange, like someone was finally reaching for him instead of the other way around. "Where's your mom?" Ethan asked gently. "She's far," the girl said, voice trembling. "Too far for me to find alone." Her name was Lyra. She came from a world he had only heard of in passing, one where bright oceans met green cliffs. But she hadn't been. Back there in years, she and her mother had been living on this station far from anyone they knew, just like him. Ethan walked with her through the echoing corridors. "Why me, Lyra? Why not ask someone from security?" "They don't understand," she said simply. "You're human, you help." The word stayed with him. You're human. You help. It reminded him of something his sister once said before she left. "Ethan, you're the kind of person who doesn't walk away when someone needs you." But lately, with so much distance between them, he'd started to doubt that was still true. They moved into quieter parts of the station, where the lighting was dim and the air smelled of old machinery. Ethan realized they were heading toward the lower maintenance decks and places he rarely visited. "Why is your mom down here?" he asked. "She works with machines." But something broke, and she didn't come back. Ethan thought about how his sister had once moved away for work too, how she said she'd visit often and how those visits became fewer and fewer. How one day he found himself waiting by the comm station for a message that never came. It hurt, not the physical kind of hurt, but the slow, quiet ache of being forgotten. Now, walking beside Lyra, he felt that same ache in her voice. They reached a narrow stairwell. Lyra hesitated. "I don't like going down here alone," she whispered. Ethan looked at her small hand still gripping his. "You're not alone now." The words felt heavy, like he was saying them to himself as much as to her. The stairs led into a dim hall, the hum of machinery vibrating through the floor. Pipes hissed overhead. The shadows seemed to stretch longer the deeper they went. "Do you know exactly where she is?" Ethan asked. Lyra shook her head. "Only that she's close, I can feel it." He nodded. He understood. Sometimes you couldn't explain why you knew something. You just did. Like the way he always knew his sister was thinking about him even when she didn't send a message. They stopped at a heavy door with faded warning signs. Lyra pressed her small palm to the cold metal. "She's behind here," she said softly. "But it's locked." Ethan knelt beside the control panel. The lock wasn't standard. It looked like someone had reinforced it from the inside. That meant her mother had probably wanted to keep something or someone out. "Can you open it?" Lyra asked. He worked in silence for a while. His tools clicked and hummed as he bypassed the lock. The air was cool against his hands and his mind wandered. He thought about sending a message to his sister when this was over. Just a simple one. Not to talk about what went wrong between them, but to tell her he was still here, still thinking of her. Maybe that would be enough to start fixing the distance. The lock finally gave way with a soft hiss. The door slid open to reveal a small maintenance bay. It was dark, except for the glow of a console in the corner. Sitting beside it, slumped against the wall, was an alien woman with scales like Lyra's but a tired, worn look in her eyes. "Mom!" Lyra ran to her and hugged her tightly. The woman smiled faintly and rested a hand on her daughter's head. "Lyra, you found help." "She's hurt," Lyra said quickly. "We need to get her to the med bay." Ethan stepped inside and checked the woman's arm. A deep cut, likely from machinery. She'd been trying to fix something when she got trapped. "I can carry her," he said, "but we'll have to move slowly." The woman looked at him. "You're human," she said. As if that explained everything. Ethan chuckled softly. So I've been told. As they made their way back, Ethan felt the woman's weight on his shoulders and Lyra's small steps beside him. The corridor didn't seem as dark now. Lyra talked quietly about her home world, about how she and her mother had always been moving from place to place. It's hard, she said. Every time we start to belong somewhere, we have to leave again. Ethan understood that better than she knew. Belonging wasn't just about where you were. It was about who you were with, and sometimes you lost those people, but sometimes you could find them again. They reached the brighter decks, and a pair of medics rushed to help. As the woman was taken onto a stretcher, she caught Ethan's hand. Thank you, she said, her silver eyes soft. Not many would have come. Ethan shrugged. Maybe more would if they knew someone needed them. He watched as the medics took her away, Lyra walking close beside them. Then Lyra turned back. She ran to him and hugged him tightly. Don't go far, she said. I want you to visit us when my mom gets better. Ethan smiled. I will. And for the first time in a long time, he meant it. As he walked back to his workshop, Ethan thought about his sister again. The long silence between them didn't feel so impossible to bridge anymore. Maybe he'd send that message tonight. He could almost hear her voice already, surprised, maybe even happy. The little alien girl had clutched his hand and said, Please, human, my mom needs us. And she was right. She had needed him, and maybe, just maybe, he needed her too. Ethan didn't see Lyra for 3 days after helping her mother. The medics had said she would be fine after treatment, but still, the station felt quieter without that small hand tugging at his. He went back to fixing pipes and checking coolant valves, but the work felt heavier somehow. He told himself he had only been helping because it was the right thing to do. But that wasn't the whole truth. The truth was, Lyra reminded him of someone. Years ago, when his sister had first moved away to another colony, she had called him every night for a week. She'd send pictures of her new place, the little kitchen with the crooked cupboard door, the view of the pale blue ocean. He had been happy for her, proud even. But after a while, the calls became less frequent. She'd get busy. He'd get tired. Messages went unanswered. And one day, he realized, they hadn't spoken for months. It was no one's fault, not really. That's just how distance worked, but still, he missed her. And now here he was again, feeling that same ache. Only this time, it was about a little alien girl and her mother. On the 4th day, Ethan finally saw Lyra again. She was waiting outside his workshop, holding a small bundle, wrapped in cloth. Hi, she said shyly. Hey, Lyra, he replied, surprised at how warm his voice sounded. How's your mom? She's better, Lyra said. She wanted me to bring you this. She unwrapped the bundle, revealing a smooth silver tool with a delicate engraving on its side. It wasn't like any wrench or scanner Ethan had seen before. It's from our homeworld, Lyra explained. It's for fixing things no one else can fix. Ethan turned it over in his hands. The metal was warm, almost alive. It's beautiful, he said honestly, but I can't take this. You helped us, she said firmly. Now we help you. Ethan felt something shift inside him. It was small, like the click of a lock opening. He decided to walk with her for a while. They wandered through the quieter decks, past the little gardens where station workers grew herbs and vegetables. Lyra told him about her school, about how the other kids didn't always understand her. They don't know my language, she said, so I don't talk much. Ethan nodded. I know what that's like. You do? She asked, surprised. Sure. When my sister moved away, I stopped talking to people for a while. I didn't feel like I fit anywhere anymore. What happened? He thought about it. I guess I'm still figuring it out. They ended up near a wide window overlooking the stars. The galaxy stretched out like a painted ocean. I like this view, Lyra said quietly. It makes me feel small, but not in a bad way. Like Even if people are far apart, they're still under the same sky. Ethan felt his throat tighten. That was exactly how he used to think about his sister. Even when she was on a different world, he'd look at the stars and tell himself they were both looking at the same light. I should call her, he murmured without meaning to. Your sister? Lyra asked. Yeah. It's been too long. Before, he could say more. The overhead lights flickered. A low hum echoed through the hall. That's not normal, Ethan said, frowning. He tapped his comm unit, but there was only static. Then, faint at first, came the sound of boots against metal. Heavy, steady. Lyra's eyes widened. They're here. Who's here? Ethan asked, but he already felt his chest tighten. The one's looking for my mom, she whispered. Ethan glanced down the hall and saw 3 figures in dark armor turning the corner. Their helmets reflected the dim light, their movements sharp and practiced. Come on, he said quickly, grabbing her hand. They slipped into a service hatch and started moving through the narrow maintenance tunnels. The air was warm here, filled with the smell of oil and metal. As they crawled, Ethan's thoughts kept drifting back to what Lyra had said earlier, about the sky, about people being under the same stars even when they were far apart. It made him think about his sister again. Maybe it wasn't too late to reconnect. Maybe the distance wasn't as big as it felt. They stopped at a junction, trying to listen for the soldiers. What do they want? Ethan asked quietly. My mom has something they need, Lyra said. Something from our world. She says it's the only way to find the place we belong. That sounds important, Ethan said. It is, she replied. But she says it's dangerous too. A clang echoed somewhere below them. They had to keep moving. Ethan led her through a cramped duct until they reached a small, unused storeroom. He closed the door and leaned against it, catching his breath. We'll stay here for a bit, he said. Lyra sat on an old crate, hugging her knees. Do you think people who move far away can still come back? The question hit him harder than he expected. Yes, he said finally. It might take time, it might not be easy, but yes, they can. Silence settled between them, broken only by the distant hum of the station's engines. Ethan thought about how he had been avoiding calling his sister because he didn't know what to say, because he was afraid she had moved on, built a life without him. But helping Lyra reminded him that sometimes all it took was one small step to close a gap that felt impossible. One message, one call, one moment where you reached out instead of turning away. The quiet didn't last long. A faint beeping came from the wall panel, a security override. Someone was trying to unlock the door. They found us, Ethan said. Lyra's small hand found his again. It was shaking. What do we do? She whispered. He looked at her, then at the silver tool she had given him earlier. We help, he said. Because that's what humans do. And as the door started to slide open, Ethan realized something. Helping wasn't just about saving someone else. Sometimes it was the only way to save yourself from the loneliness you'd been carrying all along. The little alien girl had clutched his hand once before and said, Please, human, my mom needs us. Now he was holding on just as tightly. The storeroom door slid open with a slow hiss. 3 armored mercenaries stepped inside, their black boots thudding against the metal floor. Their helmets hid their faces, but Ethan could feel their eyes on him and Lyra. There, one of them said in a cold voice. The girl. Lyra squeezed his hand so tightly it hurt. Ethan stepped forward. She's just a kid. She's not your problem. The lead mercenary tilted his head. She's exactly our problem. Hand her over, human, and walk away. Ethan's mind raced. Walking away would mean being safe. But it would also mean letting her face this alone. And he knew what that felt like. When his sister first moved away, there had been a time he needed her most. He'd had a bad accident in the engineering bay, nothing fatal but enough to keep him in the med ward for a week. He'd waited for her to call, waited for her to ask if he was okay. But the days passed, and she didn't. He told himself she was busy, that she cared, but life had pulled her away. Still, it left a space in him that had never fully closed. Now, looking at Lyra, Ethan knew he couldn't be the person who left someone behind. "You're not taking her," Ethan said firmly. The mercenary stepped closer. "Then we'll take you too." Before they could grab him, Ethan pulled the silver tool Lyra had given him from his belt. He pressed its side, and it unfolded like a flower into a compact energy cutter. He aimed it at the wall's power conduit and sliced through it in one motion. Sparks flew and the lights went out. "Run," he whispered. In the dark, he and Lyra slipped past the mercenaries and into the maintenance tunnels again. Their footsteps echoed on the narrow metal grates. Ethan's heart pounded in his ears. "They won't stop," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "I know," Ethan replied, "so we have to stay ahead of them." They climbed down a ladder into a deeper section of the station, a place Ethan had never been. The air smelled like dust and ozone. Faint blue lights pulsed along the walls, leading them forward. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To find your mom," he said. "If they want her, she's in danger too." They came to a junction where the lights grew brighter, revealing an old cargo lift. It was big enough for several people, but most of its controls were broken. Ethan knelt beside the panel, his hands moving quickly over the wiring. Lyra sat nearby, hugging her knees. After a long pause, she asked, "Do you think your sister would help us if she was here?" The question caught him off guard. "Yeah," he said after a moment. "She would. She's brave, smarter than me too." "Then why don't you talk to her?" Ethan hesitated. "Because I don't know what to say. We've been apart so long I don't know where to start." Lyra tilted her head. "Maybe you start with hi." He smiled faintly. "Maybe." The lift groaned to life, slowly carrying them down. Through the gaps in the walls, they could see endless pipes and ducts running in all directions. Somewhere, far above, a loud clang echoed. The mercenaries were still searching. When the lift stopped, they stepped out into a massive empty cargo bay. At the far end, a tall shape stood in the shadows. As they approached, Ethan realized it was a huge mining mech, abandoned, its armor dented and faded. Lyra's eyes widened. "I know this," she whispered. "My mom told me about these machines. They were built by humans a long time ago to protect people during the frontier wars." Ethan ran a hand along the mech's leg. "I've read about them. Haven't seen one this close, though," she said. "Sometimes, if the pilot's heart is strong, they still wake up." He almost laughed, but then she pulled the crystal pendant from her neck and pressed it against the mech's chest plate. A deep hum filled the air. The mech's eyes lit up, glowing bright blue. Slowly, it turned its head toward them. Its voice was deep and metallic. "Human detected. Protection protocol active." Lyra looked at Ethan. "See? It likes you." The mech knelt, lowering one massive hand. "Where do you need to go?" it asked. Ethan's instincts told him to get Lyra and her mom out of the station entirely. But part of him also wanted to stand and fight, not out of anger, but because some things were worth protecting no matter the cost. They climbed into the mech's cockpit. The interior smelled faintly of oil and old leather. Screens flickered to life around them. The mech began to move, each step echoing through the cargo bay. Its heavy frame carried them through the lower decks toward where Ethan guessed Lyra's mother might be hiding. "Why are you helping me?" Lyra asked quietly. "Because someone helped me once," Ethan said. "And because I don't want you to feel the way I felt when I was left alone." She looked out the cockpit window, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. "Then I won't forget you, even if I go far away." The mech turned a corner, and there they were. 3 more mercenaries stood outside a sealed maintenance room, their weapons drawn. Inside, Ethan could hear a faint voice calling, "Lyra's mother." "Can we save her?" Lyra asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "We can." The mech moved forward, its massive arms swinging in a controlled arc. The mercenaries scattered, their weapons useless against the reinforced armor. Ethan used the distraction to jump down and open the door. Inside, Lyra's mother was leaning against the wall, clutching a glowing data sphere. "Mom!" Lyra ran to her, hugging her tightly. Her mother looked at Ethan. "You came back." He nodded. "I don't leave people behind." They got her into the mech's cockpit just as the mercenaries regrouped. The mech's voice rumbled again. "Destination?" Ethan looked at Lyra's mother, then at Lyra. "Somewhere safe." The mech turned toward an old maintenance tunnel that led to the outer docking bays. Behind them, the mercenaries shouted, but the distance grew with every heavy step. As they moved, Ethan thought again of his sister. He imagined calling her, starting simple, like Lyra had said, maybe even visiting one day. Helping Lyra and her. Mom had reminded him that distance didn't have to mean the end of something. Sometimes it was just a space waiting to be crossed. When they reached the docking bay, the mech lowered them beside an unused shuttle. Lyra's mother stepped out first, leaning on Ethan's arm. "You've done more than help," she said. "You've given us hope." Ethan smiled faintly. "You've given me some too." As they boarded the shuttle, Lyra looked back. "We'll see each other again, right?" "Count on it," he said. The shuttle's engines flared, carrying them toward the stars. Ethan stood watching until they were only a small point of light. The little alien girl had clutched his hand once and said, "Please, human, my mom needs us." And in answering her, Ethan had found something he didn't know he was looking, or a reason to close the distance in his own life, before it was too late. Ethan stood in the docking bay long after the shuttle carrying Lyra and her mother had disappeared into the darkness. The sound of the engines still echoed in his ears, but the bay was quiet now. Too quiet. He had done the right thing, getting them to safety. But now the empty space beside him felt heavier than before. He thought about calling his sister right then, just pulling out his comm and pressing the button. But his hand stayed at his side. What would he even say? "Hi, it's been years. I don't know why we stopped talking, I miss you." The words felt too big to start with. Later, in his workshop, Ethan sat at his workbench, turning the silver tool Lyra had given him over in his hands. The engraved lines caught the light, and he thought about her words. "It's for fixing things no one else can fix." Maybe she hadn't just meant machines. But even with that thought, he didn't send a message to his sister. Instead, he got back to work repairing a damaged coolant system. The station felt safer when he had something to focus on. Our wires, circuits, and tools didn't walk away. They didn't leave. Still, that night when he lay down in his small bunk, the quiet felt too loud. The next morning, the station alarms went off. Ethan grabbed his jacket and ran to the main console. The report scrolled across the screen. Unidentified vessel approaching. Possible hostile presence. His first thought was of Lyra and her mother. Had they made it far enough? Were the mercenaries still chasing them? He tapped the comm to try and get more details, but the channels were full of static. Whatever was coming in was jamming the signals. Hours later, a knock sounded at his workshop door. When he opened it, Lyra was standing there. She looked tired, her silver eyes dim. Her mother stood behind her, leaning on a staff for support. "You're supposed to be gone," Ethan said, surprised. "We tried," her mother said. "But the ship, it followed us back. They know the map is here. We couldn't lead them to my people, so we returned." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted them safe, far away from danger. But he also understood, and some things you couldn't run from. They stepped inside, and Lyra sat at the workbench. Her eyes landed on the silver tool. "You kept it," she said. "Of course," Ethan replied. "I told you it was special." Her mother placed the glowing data sphere on the table. "If the mercenaries get this, they will sell its secrets to the highest bidder. Whole worlds could be destroyed over it. We need a place to hide it." Ethan looked at the sphere. It reminded him of an old hollow his sister had once sent him. The two of them sitting by a campfire back on Earth, their faces lit by the glow. "I'll help," he said. "We'll keep it safe." That decision brought its own weight. The mercenaries wouldn't just give up. They'd search every level of the station, and Ethan, Lyra, and her mother would be caught in the middle. They needed a plan. "Where can we hide something no one else will look?" Ethan asked. "The core," her mother said. "Near the reactor. Too dangerous for most to enter." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know the way." They moved quietly through the maintenance tunnels. Lyra walked beside him, holding the sphere carefully. After a while, she asked, "Why didn't you call your sister yet?" Ethan sighed. "Because I don't know if she wants to hear from me. We haven't talked in so long. What if she doesn't care anymore?" Lyra thought for a moment. "My mom says caring doesn't stop just because you're far away. It only stops if you want it to." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Maybe distance wasn't the end after all. When they reached the reactor levels, the air grew warmer. The hum of the core filled the space, steady and strong. Ethan led them to a service hatch hidden behind a cluster of coolant pipes. "Here," he said. "No one comes here unless they're repairing the reactor." They carefully placed the sphere inside a shielded compartment. Ethan sealed it with a coded lock only he could open. "It's safe," he said. Lyra smiled. "You fixed it." Ethan laughed softly. "Guess I did." As they headed back, the sound of boots echoed behind them. The mercenaries had found their trail. Ethan's pulse quickened. They couldn't fight them all, but they could buy time. "Go," he told Lyra and her mother. "I'll slow them down." Her mother hesitated. "You'll be caught." "I've been alone before," Ethan said, "but I won't let you be." He stepped into the hallway, blocking the mercenaries' path. They raised their weapons, but Ethan wasn't afraid. He triggered the energy cutter on the silver tool, slicing through the overhead pipe. Steam hissed out, filling the corridor with blinding white vapor. In the chaos, Lyra and her mother slipped away. The mercenaries shouted, but by the time the steam cleared, Ethan was gone too, climbing into a side duct. Hours later, they met again. In the station's old observation deck, from here the stars stretched endlessly. The sight made Ethan think of what Lyra had said in the garden, about everyone being under the same sky. "You should keep moving," Ethan told them. "If the mercenaries stay, it's me they'll be looking for now." Her mother nodded, but Lyra stepped forward and hugged him. "Don't wait too long to talk to your sister," she said. "I won't," he promised. After they left, Ethan stayed in the observation deck. The stars glittered like they were waiting for him to make a move. He pulled out his comm. His hand hesitated over the call button, just like it always did, but this time he pressed it. When his sister's voice came through, surprised, soft, he felt something in his chest loosen. "Hey," he said. "It's me. I just wanted to say hi." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Ethan didn't expect his sister to answer. When her voice came through, it was hesitant at first, a little unsure, like she wasn't certain it was really him. "Ethan?" "Yeah, it's me," he said quietly. "It's been a while." "A while," she repeated, almost laughing, but not unkindly. "More like years." "I know," he admitted. "I just wanted to say hi, see how you're doing." There was a pause. "I'm okay, busy. The colony's grown a lot since you were here." They spoke for only a few minutes before the signal started to fade. But it was enough. Hearing her voice felt like opening a door he thought had been locked forever. When the call ended, he sat for a while in the observation deck, staring at the stars. The ache in his chest was still there, but now it had a thread of hope running through it. The hope didn't last long before reality returned. The station's security reports showed the mercenaries hadn't left. They were still moving between decks, searching. Ethan knew they wouldn't stop until they found the data sphere, and if they found it, Lyra and her mother's people would be in danger. He needed a plan, something that would protect the sphere, keep the mercenaries away from it, and maybe, just maybe, end this for good. That night, Ethan sat at his workbench with the silver tool Lyra had given him. He studied the engravings, wondering how something so small could feel like such a big responsibility. His sister's words from their call echoed in his mind. You've always been the one who fixes things, Ethan. But maybe this time, let someone help you too. He didn't know if she meant the machines, his life, or both, but either way, she was right. The next day, he sent a message to Lyra. Meet me at the garden level. Bring your mom. They arrived quietly, keeping to the shadows. Lyra's eyes were bright, even though the situation was dangerous. You called your sister? She asked before anything else. Yeah, Ethan said. It was good. Scary, but good. She smiled. Told you. They sat on one of the benches by the herb gardens. The air smelled of mint and basil, a sharp contrast to the metallic scent of the lower decks. I have a plan, Ethan said, but it's risky. Her mother listened carefully as he explained. They couldn't just keep running, the mercenaries were too determined. Instead, they'd lead them into a part of the station where the structure was unstable, a sector sealed off years ago. The mercenaries would follow, and Ethan would trap them there long enough for security to arrive. What if they catch you? Lyra asked. Ethan shrugged. Then I hope you'll come rescue me. Her mother shook her head. You're risking too much. That's what humans do, Ethan said with a faint smile. The plan began that evening. Ethan made sure the mercenaries caught a glimpse of him in the maintenance tunnels, just enough to start the chase. He led them through narrow ducts, up ladders and across old service bridges that creaked under their weight. Every step took them deeper into the sealed sector. The walls here were scorched from an old reactor accident. Pipes hissed steam. The floor plates shifted underfoot. The mercenaries didn't care, they were too focused on him. At the far end of the sector, Ethan reached the control panel for the blast doors. This was the only exit. He tapped his comm. Lyra, are you in position? Her voice came back, small but steady. We're ready. On my signal, seal the doors. The mercenaries were getting close now. Ethan could hear their boots pounding the floor. He ducked behind a row of coolant tanks, waiting until they were almost on top of him. Then he ran. They followed him into the open chamber where the walls were cracked and the ceiling dripped condensation. Ethan jumped through the far doorway and shouted into his comm, "Now!" A loud clang echoed through the sector as the blast doors slammed shut behind him, trapping the mercenaries inside. For a moment, all he heard was the sound of his own breathing. Then came the pounding, fists and weapons striking the sealed door. They won't get out until security arrives, he told Lyra. Later they met again in the garden level. The air was calmer now, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last forever. Lyra's mother thanked him. You didn't have to do this. You could have walked away. I could have, Ethan admitted, but then I wouldn't be me. Lyra stepped forward. And you wouldn't have fixed it. He laughed softly. I guess not. As they sat together, Ethan thought about his sister again. How easy it had been to lose touch. How hard it had been to take the first step toward fixing it. But he'd done it. And maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to really rebuild what they'd lost. Lyra's mother interrupted his thoughts. You should visit her, she said. You never know when distance will become permanent. Ethan nodded. I will, as soon as this is over. That night in his workshop, Ethan sent another message to his sister. I'm still here. Just wanted you to know. He didn't expect an immediate reply. But a minute later, the comm pinged. I know. I've missed you. Ethan smiled, leaning back in his chair. The silver tool sat on the bench in front of him, catching the light. Sometimes, fixing something wasn't about replacing broken parts. Sometimes it was about holding on even when it was easier to let go. And that, he thought, was something humans were very good at. The message from his sister stayed on Ethan's comm screen. All night, I know. I've missed you. He must have read it 100 times. It was just a few words, but they made him feel lighter, like a door had been opened in a room he didn't realize had been locked for years. But before he could reply, the station alarms went off again. He hurried to the main console. The security feed showed something worse than before. The mercenaries had escaped the sealed sector, and they weren't alone. A small gunship had docked without clearance. More soldiers were unloading, heavily armed, moving with purpose. Ethan's first thought was of Lyra and her mother. He didn't even grab his jacket, just the silver tool, before running toward the garden level where they usually met. He found them already packing what little they had. Lyra's eyes were wide with fear. "They've found us again," her mother said. "We can't hide forever." Ethan nodded. "Then we don't hide. We end this." Her mother hesitated. "You mean to fight them?" "I mean to protect you," Ethan said simply. He looked at Lyra. "If we run, they'll chase us. If we stand here, we'll lose. We need to take the fight somewhere they can't win." That somewhere was the reactor core. It was dangerous. Radiation levels were high, and the heat alone could cripple a ship's systems if they got too close. But Ethan knew the layout, and he knew how to use it against them. They moved quickly through the maintenance tunnels. Every step echoed with urgency. As they walked, Lyra asked quietly, "Did you answer your sister yet?" "Not yet," Ethan admitted. "I want to. I just don't know how to explain everything." "Maybe you don't need to," Lyra said. "Maybe just tell her you're glad she answered." He smiled faintly. "You're too smart for your age." When they reached the reactor chamber, Ethan led them to a shielded alcove near the control panel. "This is safe," he said. "Stay here. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, take the emergency lift to the upper decks." Lyra grabbed his arm. "You will come back." "I'll try," Ethan promised. The mercenaries arrived minutes later. Their leader stepped into the chamber, scanning the shadows. "You've been a problem, human," he said. "But we'll end that now." Ethan stepped out from behind the panel, holding the silver tool. "If you want the sphere, you'll have to come through me." The leader laughed. "We planned to." They opened fire, but Ethan was already moving. He ducked behind coolant pipes, using his knowledge of the chamber to stay out of sight. Each shot they fired hit something critical, and each time he made sure it was something that would make their job harder. He cut a steam line with the silver tool, filling the room with a blinding white cloud. The mercenaries shouted, their visors fogging. Then Ethan triggered a magnetic lock on the chamber doors, sealing them inside. "You think this will stop us?" the leader roared. "No," Ethan said, "but it will slow you down until station security gets here." He didn't see the mercenary coming from behind. The soldier slammed into him, knocking the tool from his hand. Ethan hit the floor hard. The soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a deep metallic voice shook the chamber. "Human. Protection protocol active." The old mining mech stepped through the doorway, its eyes glowing blue. Lyra sat in the cockpit, her small hands gripping the controls. "I told you you'd come back," she shouted. The mech's massive arm swung, knocking the soldier across the chamber. The others turned their fire on it, but its armor held. Ethan scrambled to his feet and grabbed the silver tool again. With the mech distracting the mercenaries, he moved to the control panel and triggered a partial reactor overload. Warning sirens blared. The leader froze. "You're mad. You'll blow us all up." Ethan shook his head. "Not if you leave. Now." The mercenaries looked at each other, then at the mech towering over them. Slowly, they backed toward the exit. "Next time," the leader said, pointing at Ethan. "There won't be a next time," Ethan replied. When the last of them was gone, Ethan shut down the overload and let out a shaky breath. The mech knelt and Lyra jumped down. "Told you we'd help," she said with a grin. Her mother stepped out from the alcove, relief in her eyes. "You saved us again, human." Ethan shook his head. "We saved each other." That night, after station security confirmed the mercenaries had left for good, Ethan finally replied to his sister. "I'm glad you answered. I've missed you too." The reply came quickly. "Then maybe it's time I came to visit." Ethan stared at the message, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the reactor's heat. For so long, he'd thought the distance between them was permanent. But now, he knew it wasn't. He met Lyra in the garden the next morning. They sat under the warm lights, watching the leaves sway gently in the air vent's breeze. "My sister might visit," Ethan said. "That's good. Lyra replied. Then you can tell her all your stories. He chuckled. Maybe I'll tell her about the little alien girl who saved me as much as I saved her. Lyra smiled. You're going to fix it, aren't you, with your sister? Ethan nodded. Yeah. I think I already started. Sometimes fixing things wasn't about knowing every step ahead. Sometimes it was just about taking the first one. And that Ethan thought was something humans and friends were made for.